Hey, everybody. Welcome to Perpetual Motion, a program about culture, wellness, and relationships. I'm the host, Dr. Mo Anderson, and my goal is to help you stress less, produce more. I don't need these anymore. I can see. And love the one you're with. Today, my special guest is one amazing lady, Miss Brooke Fitzpatrick. Brooke Fitzpatrick, that's a mouthful, but a beautiful person who is a very successful matchmaker and relationship coach based right here near me in Dallas, Texas. Welcome and thank you for joining me, Brooke.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mo, for having me on. I'm really excited about connecting with you today.
It's been a program I've been looking forward to, an episode. We do a podcast and a video podcast, but I was like, people have got to see you live and in person because you are just so phenomenal. And in our conversations, I really enjoyed your expertise, your wealth of knowledge. So I know people are going to be really impacted by what you share here today. And I'm going to get out of the way and let you do what you do. Let's start with the big picture. When did you start mosaicmatchmaking.com? And I'll drop that in the comments, and why?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's funny because I actually started my business in the middle of the pandemic. So last year, I decided to actually launch the business. It had been something that had been on my heart for a while, just because I love connecting people. I had been being matchmaker with family and friends for a long time. But I finally decided that it was time for me to launch this business because I'm really feeling a gap in the dating industry market. I think, Dr. Mo, you and I talked about how there are matchmakers, but there's not a lot of matchmakers of color. And about 90% of my clientele are women. When I was having conversations with my girlfriends, they talked to me about their dating horror stories and how they were meeting people and things wouldn't work out for one reason or another. And so that's when I really decided, like, hey, it's time for me to go ahead and launch this business, fill this gap, serve this particular population. So that's where I am. And I'm coming up on my one year anniversary. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, happy anniversary to you. And that is a good thing, especially considering you started at a very difficult, challenging time for businesses and for singles, because Lord, full disclosure, I reached out to Brooke several months ago because I was like, this swiping is not working for me. I need some help. And I got to Googling, and honestly, I was shocked when you popped up. I'm like, there's a Black matchmaker? Oh my God, in Dallas? Right down the street. Yes, ma'am. Well, how did you go from, you've got a really amazing background. You got your bachelor's, and then you have a Master of Science in Human Resource Development from the University of Texas at Tyler. How do you go from that to matchmaking? Is there a program or a course, or what's the qualifications?
That's a great question. And so, as I mentioned to you, I've always just loved being a matchmaker. But when I decided to actually make this a business, I did go and get some more formal certifications. And so they have an institute that matchmakers can get certified through. There's a code of ethics that we sign. There's different trainings and programs that they teach us, just kind of like continuing education classes they have. But the beauty of that program, Dr. Mo, is it also allowed me to connect with other matchmakers across the United States. And so within that, anytime, you're in your industry, it's great to just be amongst other professionals because we're able to actually share best practices with each other. I've learned so much from them when I'm, starting my business, just even small takeaways about how we can better service our clients. So I did go through a formal training and a certification program there. And honestly, with my background, I have customer success, as you mentioned. I have my master's in human resource development. Those are really skills that I will tell you that I utilize every day, especially the customer success, because anybody, and as you know, anytime you have your own business, that customer relations and customer success portion is so important because I want my clients to trust me. And also I want to make sure I'm providing excellent service. So that is a skill that I use on a daily basis. Also, in terms of the human resource development, just understanding how to relate to adults, which is the population that I serve, that has come in handy a lot as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, it sounds like the perfect background. And as well, I just want people to know, because, like roofing, anybody can give you a business card and say they're a roofer. But if you're going to do this and you're looking for a committed relationship, then I feel like you need to be with someone who is well qualified as you are. That's an amazing background. What services do you offer? And I dropped your website in the chat, but what services do you offer other than matchmaking?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. So matchmaking is obviously the biggest service, but I also offer date coaching and do speaking engagements. Date coaching is something that I feel like is a really great service that I like to couple in. So all of my matchmaking clients get some date coaching, but I also do one-on-one date coaching sessions because sometimes I have people come to me and they're like, you know what, I don't necessarily need the full-fledged matchmaking service because matchmaking is very hands-on. You're essentially outsourcing your dating life. And also my date coaching is more budget friendly. And so that's a great option for people who may not be looking to invest fully into matchmaking and also who just may need specific help. Like one of my date coaching programs, I specifically help with just online dating and helping set up your online dating profile, getting you on some dating app recommendations, helping you figure out like, hey, how can I vet these people? How can I strike up conversations? One other service that I offer is just helping people to optimize their online dating profiles, taking a look at what they have, maybe suggesting some photos, telling them how it may be perceived by other people, recommending some changes they could make to the actual bio as well. So those are some services I offer in addition to just matchmaking.
Well, thank you for doing that, because most singles like me have tried the dating apps and it can be so frustrating when you meet these people and, oh my goodness, the picture is 20 years old. The bio was clearly written by their daughter with a PhD in human relations. You're talking like there is no way you wrote that. And I get a little nervous when they just, they don't want to message it all. It's like, let's meet. And I was like, no, let's chat.
So that definitely could use some space. So I'm always happy when people say that, hey, I could use some date coaching help, because everybody could. I mean, it's a lot that goes into dating, as you know.
Yes, I know. And I appreciate the spectrum of services that you offer, because, matchmaking with a professional is an investment, as it should be, because of, what we're asking of you, but also for people who, might not be able to afford some of the other services that you've got a full spectrum there. Absolutely. That is amazing. So we talk about online and then what services you offer, but as you get into, like, somebody's committed, I want this service, before the first date, do you provide date coaching? Or, because we're talking about in person, not helping with the profile, but how do you prepare the person? Because I mean, clearly we need some help. I know when I need help, or we wouldn't be reaching out.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great question. And I'll walk you through my process as well, which kind of tells you how in depth I go with my clients. So really, anytime a matchmaking client comes on, I start with doing a series of interviews with them. And so the first one is going to be an interview where I'm learning about that person. I'm trying to understand their lifestyle, their background, their goals, their motivation, who makes them them. Because that information is going to give me insight on the type of person that they would match well with as well. Then I have them take a couple of assessments. One of them is the love language assessment. This is all information that I'm gathering because it allows me to understand how they're going to be courting and dating wise. And then from there, the exciting part is we do what's called an exercise in their dating preferences. And so we literally go through all of their dating preferences, physical traits, characteristics that they think of when they are imagining an ideal partner for themselves. And date coaching comes in then as well, because as we're going through all those traits and characteristics, we talk about which ones of these are deal breakers, which one of these are nice to have, should haves. Are there any of your traits and characteristics, or is there anything that you're looking for that might might be obstacles finding for whatever reason. Also, as their matchmaker, I'm sharing what traits and characteristics can I realistically vet for versus what are some things that we're only going to know after some time. And so date coaching is even implementing that stage just because we need to make sure that we're on the same page and there's nothing that we're looking for that's going to prevent or find obstacles for us. Also, one thing I offer a lot of my clients is what's called a virtual mock date. So I actually have a Black male date coach that I'm partnered with, and he does these wonderful mock dates with my female clients and vice versa.
I love that.
Yes, and if you're a male client, I have a female that I'm partnered with as well. And it's basically this mock date that you're on, just like you do any other Zoom introduction, as if you're really meeting someone. And he's able to just get them talking and laughing, having a great time. But he gives us feedback right away on things like, hey, how did you appear? Were you flirtatious? Did you wear the right things? Were you showing enough skin versus were you clothed enough? And so that has just been helpful. And then I'm holding my client's hand. I'm there supporting them all throughout the process. If they have questions about when should I text back, what should I do in this scenario? I'm with them. So after the
you're on tap. You can
exactly.
Oh, wow.
I don't turn you loose. That's the thing. It's a supportive process and I'm with them every step of the way.
Oh, I love that that's hands-on because so many things now it's like, oh, here's a program, buy my workshop or whatever. Right. You need help, you need questions, you need guidance, and that, that you provide that. It makes me think about the program. I think a lot of people now have seen the reality show, Indian Matchmaking, and really enjoyed that. But it seemed like a lot of the people, you mentioned vetting the people and so forth, it seems like a lot of people are really not aware of their own weaknesses and maybe overestimate their strengths as they're going through what they want. Because I mean, one of the things I firmly believe is to make a list of the qualities that you want and then become that person to attract someone similar. But how do you broach that with them if they've got some habits or tendencies or things that you notice to help them, be authentic, but at the same time address this need for personal growth?
Yes, that's a really great question because I do have to find that balance. And so one of the things is I try to set expectations up at front, and I tell them, I want to be transparent with you, asking permission. How transparent can I be? Because I want them to make sure that they're receptive of the feedback. And when I give them that feedback, I don't want them to think that I'm coming at it from a way that's attacking them or criticizing them. And so I kind of try to establish that expectation up front. And then if there is something that they're looking for or something that they're doing or something I see, I do address it. And I try to let them know, like, hey, this is something that I've seen, or this is something that, I have noticed with matches or as we're going through this process. Let's talk about it. Why do you think that this is maybe a preconceived notion you have? Or why do you think that this is something that you feel like it is something you may not be able to get over? So trying to get down to the root of the issue helps a lot as well. And then also maybe giving them an example of, hey, because you're doing this is kind of the result, or this is where it's becoming an issue.
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent. And I can see between, your feedback and the fact that, they're your client, you're trying to help them in the mock date and all of that's going to help, with the assessment process. And it is, I know as we get older, it becomes a little bit harder to take feedback. So you definitely want to broach it in the right way. And I'm sure you do that. I'm going back to the vetting question though. I reached out to a bunch of folks to let them know we were going to be doing this episode, and they're very excited, a lot of working right now. But one of the things they wanted to know is, do you do a background check as part of your process?
Oh, that's a great question. So, and when I talk about that community of matchmakers, this is one we debate a lot. So I do what is called vetting. I have to be very clear that I do not run formal background checks for a few different reasons. Okay. Basic background checks, they don't cover a lot of stuff, especially like if someone may have moved to a different state. In order to do like a full-fledged criminal background check, I would need someone's information like their social security number. Okay. And for me, obviously that's a liability for me to collect that information because I'd have to make sure that's being stored. But even more importantly, you also have to think about, is that information that you're willing to give a matchmaker. Right. I know I'm hesitant to give my social security number. And so I think that, well, I know that would obviously pose as an obstacle, but also even with background checks, they only cover so much. And so the thing is, I could run a background check on someone on Monday. They could commit a crime or do something on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I have told you, hey, I ran this background check. You go out with them on Friday and there's information that we just completely missed. And so I'm very careful with my clients to understand you do what you need to do in terms of if you are starting to talk to this person, you want to run a formal background check. And of course, I do internet searches to check for things like background and I do my vetting, but I like to make it very clear about how I stand on background. What you can expect of me and the services I provide. So that's a good question. Okay.
And the person who asked that had some instances with people who were married, as well as some criminal, assault type of thing, which, for females is really scary. And I think that's part of taking your time to get to know people as well, because sometimes you can see they have anger issues or other things before you jump in too fast. But I mean, you got a great answer for everything.
Thank you. But no, that's a great question, because like I said, that's one that we talk about a lot amongst our matchmaking community. So that's a really great question.
Is it okay, in terms of deal breakers and red flags, is it okay to have some deal breakers, some things that you just cannot deal with? I mean, whether it's height or smoking or someone who lives in the same city, or do we just need to be open to the universe and just, go with the flow? What are your thoughts on that?
That's another great question. And yes, absolutely. Everybody has their deal breakers. What I say about deal breakers is think about, is it going to impact your quality of life? So some deal breakers that I feel like are reasonable and realistic are things like faith. So if you are a Christian and, obviously that's a big part of your life and you want another Christian, that makes sense. I can understand that being a deal breaker. Lifestyle, coming back again, not wanting to date a smoker, that's going to impact your quality of life. If you don't like smoke, you don't believe that, smoking is healthy for you or whatever stance you have on it, that's understandable because that's going to impact your quality of life. Now, when it comes to something like height, you have to ask yourself, is that really going to impact my quality of life? If you're looking for someone,
that's fair.
Yes.
I'm blushing because I have height issues.
A lot, you know what? I have learned a lot of people too. And it's so interesting to me because, we have the women that, they're I'd say under 5'7".
Right.
Now, if you're 5'10", 5'11", I can understand you wanting someone who's taller than you, because there's guys that obviously aren't. But when I have women who are shorter than that come to me and they're like, oh, I want him to be at least 6 feet tall, I kind of look at them and said, oh, okay, is that a hard and stop deal breaker? Is that a preference? How are you feeling about that? And when I hear that, I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. That's one of those areas when I go through their preferences that I said, let's talk about, because this is obviously an obstacle. And one thing, and we'll probably get into this more, Dr. Mo, but one thing as a matchmaker that I do a lot of time thinking about is the dating pool. And so whenever you have an expectation or a requirement or a deal breaker, and it's fine to have all of those, but you have to realize that you're also making your dating pool smaller. So like for every inch you have on height, like I want a guy 6 feet and above, you're eliminating all the guys who are 5'7". You're eliminating all the great guys who are 5'8", all the wonderful guys who are 5'9". And so I just like people to kind of think about that. And that's why I said, when I'm thinking about deal breakers, think about, are they lifestyle changes? And height, that's not necessarily one of them, in my opinion.
You are right about that. You're right about that. Absolutely. But it's just, we get into these little patterns and things we like that are putting up walls that we don't need in front of us. So
of course.
Great answer.
I respect preferences for sure. And then that's the thing as a matchmaker. And to be honest with you, Dr. Mo, it gets to the point, this is something else we did kind of discuss in our community, but it gets to the point where when people come to us with deal breakers, I'm not talking about preferences, because I love hearing your preferences. When people talk to us about deal breakers, like I do not want to meet, or I would not entertain or be introduced to someone who, let's say, maybe is not college educated, or someone who is not at least 6 feet tall, or someone who, these small kind of like, I'm not going to call anybody's deal breakers petty, but small deal breakers like that, especially physically, it's almost one of those things where it's like, hey, maybe you should try doing a dating app because you can filter for things like that. If you're going to invest and hire a matchmaker, my focus is really on helping you find people that are compatible and who I think there'd be chemistry and you'd be a good fit with. So if you're going to put deal breakers like height and maybe like education, then you can use a dating app because you can filter for all of those things.
Right.
So I will add that.
Okay. Your personal story is pretty interesting. I'm happy that you are married because I don't think I want a matchmaker that hasn't found a match, and is public on your website. Would you mind sharing about you and Jared? I think that's pretty beautiful.
Absolutely. And which I love my husband, because I will tell you, Dr. Mo, I think that's some of the motivation that I had for starting the business. So we bring balance to each other because I'm this great visionary or this dreamer, but my husband is the execution person. He's like, let's execute on this. Let's get this idea out there. And so whenever I told him about this, I was like, I really want to do this. We prayed about it and he was like, let's go. And so he was really the one who helped me put pen to paper in terms of like the business plan operation. So I'll say that, like, and I think when I say the motivation, I know how it is having my partner. And so I wanted that for people who desire it. Him and I have been married for going on 5 years now. We're about to reach our 5-year anniversary towards the end of this year. Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. And so him and I actually met through our Black Employee Resource Group when I first moved to Dallas.
Okay.
I've been in Dallas for 6 years now, and the rest was history.
Wow, now you came right in and got a man. Look at you.
Well, look, I was not looking. And I'm not saying that you can't, people come to you when you're not looking, but for him, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to enjoy my new city. And then here he comes. But he was definitely the right match for me. So yeah, I love him.
Great.
He's fun. Yep, he's great. He is great. And I have a lot to thank him for with helping me run this business. So
well, and that's the thing too, is someone who compliments you. They don't have to be just like you, but that's a big thing for me to support my dreams and my vision and vice versa. I've gotten into relationships where all of a sudden, I'm the admin and the party planner and it's just like, I don't want another job. I need you to take something.
Right.
I don't mind helping you, but I need you to take something off my plate. So
absolutely. Yep. And I even thinking about that when I'm matching my clients, because, you need someone who's also going to bring balance to your life. And like you said, who's going to compliment you. Like y'all want to balance. So that is something I definitely consider when matching as well.
Right. Absolutely. We've got some questions that I've gotten. People have emailed and messaged me. But before we go into that, I want to just reintroduce us for anyone who's joined later. I am Dr. Mo Anderson, author, speaker, podcast host. And today we're doing a live video podcast with Brooke Fitzpatrick, CEO, founder, president of Mosaic Matchmaking.com in Dallas, Texas. She is a relationship and dating expert, and she is offering services to help those of you who may be challenged, particularly in this environment with, looks like we're going back home. I don't know if we want to call it stay at home, but going back home and you're looking for, quality and you want long-term commitment. Brooke Fitzpatrick can help you with that. And we have her here today to answer your relationship and dating questions. I dropped her website in the chat, but she's going to tell us how to reach her on her other social media and contacts. And so stay tuned, drop your questions in the chat. I'll ask her, I'll share them with her, and really excited to have you here. Here are some of the questions we got. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Questions are coming like fastballs. They're coming. People want to know.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm happy to share.
All right, we've got one from Anthony Reed, my boo. And let me clarify that I am not looking right now because he is on here watching. Hey, babe. Is it more difficult to match younger singles or people in their 50s?
Oh, that's a really good question as well. Thank you for that. So you know what? It's actually sometimes a little bit easier to match people who are older, because when I think about my younger clients, The thing is, a lot of times children are a big part of those matches. And so I'm matching people who, do they still want children? They might have young children. And so that's something big that I have to consider and comes into play. A lot of times when I'm matching for people who are older, who may already have children who are out of the house, or they decided that they didn't want children, that is a little bit easier in terms because your lifestyle doesn't involve like your dependence anymore. You're not no longer considering like, okay, well, I'm right now I'm figuring out someone that I want to be maybe my children's mother or my children's father. That's not coming into play anymore. At this point, you're trying to just enjoy your life. So when it comes to ease, I'm not going to necessarily say it's a lot easier. It's just different, but less factors are involved when dating, when matching older adults. Yeah.
And I have to say, as I've gotten to middle age too, that I am a lot less judgmental and a lot more spontaneous because I don't have so many things, pulling on me, and I have time to really be introspective and think about what I'm thinking and why am I thinking it. So I can see that.
Absolutely.
Here's another question. Several men have asked, and some women, why women only text them. Technology may or may not have made dating easier, but they want to talk on the phone, they want to video chat, and these people only want to text with them. What's that about? How do you get around it? Help.
That's actually a great question, because I talk to a lot of men. I talk to a lot of women too. And one thing I do ask when I'm vetting and talking to potential matches is, what form of communication do you prefer? And so that's something I will always tell any couple when they're starting to date. A conversation should be had about, how do you prefer to communicate? Yes. Because a lot of men especially tell me that they love in person and talking on the phone. And so that is something that's really easy to change if you just communicate like, hey, I prefer phone calls, or hey, I actually prefer texting during the day because I'm only available for phone calls maybe in the evening times. So definitely a conversation that you should have up front, even maybe on the first or second date, about how do you prefer to communicate, and that will save you a lot of heartache.
That's, what's interesting too is, really, I was just cool before COVID, but that almost year at home by myself, I was like, oh Lord, I got it. This is not working for me
a lot
anymore. And it also changed my preferred communication, because I was doing so many things, just busy all the time, that texting, was great. But now I want to hear a voice. I want to talk. Yeah. And so just texting all the time doesn't work for me anymore, because I need that connection. I don't know what flipped, but I need to hear a voice. I need some connection. So I guess in addition to having it at the beginning, if you're going through something or things have changed, you need to communicate that.
Absolutely. Definitely. So keeping those lines of communication open, you can never go wrong.
You are right about that. We have a question from someone here on Facebook in the chat, Arcuya Ann Rivers Todd. Sustainability. What makes an individual a good match potential? Oh,
okay. That's great. So that's a good question. Thank you. So what I do is I'll share a little bit about how I vet my matches. So I think I talked to y'all a little bit earlier about the process I go through. For those who may not have been on, I do a whole stage where I'm gathering information. So I'm learning about who my client is as a person. We're going through all of their dating preferences. But the way that I vet and determine if someone is a good match for my client is I actually have a series of questions that I go through. So for each match, I personally talk to them. I understand their background, their lifestyles, their motivations, but also I'm asking them specific questions to determine if they would be a good fit for my client. And so I'll give you an example. So one of those is one of my clients, she is politically involved, and she only wants to date people who believe that it is important to vote and actually vote. So that's a specific question that with her matches specifically, I talk to them about and I get into. I also, like we mentioned earlier, I also look for signs or what's their lifestyle. Is this going to be a compatible lifestyle to the one that my client is already living? Right. And also, is it going to be something that they can complement each other? So say, for instance, I'm working with someone who they may have a really demanding job. Well, is this person, are they someone who understands and knows how to take time out for themselves and to enjoy life? Is that something that they can then kind of pull my client into? So those are some things that I kind of look for when I'm making these matches. Also, I'm looking, one thing I do with everyone is I check social media. Social media gives me a lot of information about a person. Not only do I check to see what they post, I like to see what they share, what they comment on, because that's going to give me even more insight.
Comment on.
Yep, what they comment on, especially if they're in groups. Because a lot of times you may have people who may not post a lot, but if they're in like a Facebook group, if you go to their profile, you can kind of see like their comment history. And that can give me good insight onto their beliefs. It can.
It can. So you made me think about this Cardi B song. Be careful with me. She said, liking pics and not returning texts. I was like, Cardi B was on to something. Who knew?
Social media, how people put themselves out there, that reveals a lot. And so that's why I really try to do a good job with at least checking. Instagram's a huge one I like to check. I like to check their Facebook because I just like to see how they put themselves out there.
Absolutely. That's important. And I mean, even on your own, that's a good thing to do before you friend anyone or whatever, just a cursory look. It really does say a lot about a person. And I don't like to unfriend people, but I will if what they're doing just really doesn't gel with me and my point of view. Hey, got another question for you. How do you avoid sabotaging a potential relationship when you get triggered from something that happened in a past relationship, those emotional minefields?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would recommend starting to do is kind of like a brain dump. So actually physically take a pencil, pen, and paper and write down what those triggers are for you. And also where they came from, what they stem from, what particular scenario and maybe a previous relationship, brought this up. And then also kind of thinking about, as I'm dating, this is where that trigger happens because they might say something like this, or they may not return my phone call. So literally physically writing that down. And because when you write it down, you obviously get to visualize it. And you're taking it from your mind, obviously, to pad and paper, and you're now aware of what's happening, what you're doing. And so from there, now that you have that awareness, because you've actually seen it on pen and paper, talk about it. And that's something that I would talk to about my clients, especially with their triggers, but understand like, hey, this is something that I don't like because of XYZ, depending on how you are in that relationship, especially if it's someone that you're actively dating and you're getting to know, that might be something that you even share with them. Hey, a trigger for me is when you maybe you don't tell me, like when you don't answer your phone and then I don't hear from you all evening, I don't know what's happened. Just kind of understanding and sharing, that's very helpful too. And then just recognizing that, hey, which of these triggers are what is potentially, how do I get over this? Because understanding that this is a new person. And if I'm projecting something that's happened previously, I could, as they said, sabotage what's going on in this new relationship. So just being aware of that this person is new, even if you have to say affirmations to yourself, like this is not my ex. I cannot project what my ex did onto this new person.
Right. That's really, really good. Now, what if you're on the receiving end of that? If they're sharing something, a trust issue or whatever it is, anger or whatever, and you don't feel like it's really a big deal, but and you can be dismissive with that. But I think if they shared it, then it's something you need to react to. But how do you just listen and try to change your behavior, or is there a discussion like, I don't really think that's a problem? How do you deal with that?
That's a great question. And the experts always say answer by asking more questions, be interested in what that person has to say. One thing that I hear all the time when my husband and I try to go to marriage conferences, and they say, like, when someone brings something up to you, obviously they care about you because one, they felt comfortable enough with you to share that thing. And number two, this is something that they are trying to work on. And obviously you mean enough to them for them to bring it up to you in conversation. So look at it as, hey, this person is comfortable with me. This person trusts me, and be glad that they shared this with you. Also, a really great way to respond and a reassuring way to respond to that person would be to ask more questions. Maybe even just saying something as simple as like, hey, what can I do? Or is there something about my behavior that you think I can change to help you feel more secure in our relationship? So just being interested in asking more questions. And like you said, having that discussion around it. And sometimes maybe it's not anything you can do. Maybe it's just that person has to get over it, but just letting them know that you're supportive. And now you understand and will do what you can to help, bring security.
I think having that awareness too is
absolutely
helpful.
Absolutely.
If I know that was an issue, even if it's not here, I can be aware and be sensitive to it. Great advice. Some experts, and this is something I come into with my Southern Baptist roots, some experts advise women, I mean, we're the ones who hear this, to be more assertive in pursuing men. But other experts say when a man finds a woman, that scripture, finds a wife, he finds a good thing. It's just confusing. There are even guys who on their profile, they'll be like, don't chase me. If I'm interested, I'll come after you. And then other guys like, shoot me a note. If you want to talk to me, tell me if you right. What is your advice for women? And I'm thinking online dating now, just giving general advice.
Yeah, this is a really great question. You're right. This comes up so much because there's so many mixed, conflicting signals out there. My stance is that I do still believe that men should be leaders and they should be the one to pursue women. Now, the difference is I think, and I do encourage women to let their interests be known. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion happens.
Okay.
I think it's very much okay and even encouraged for women to let their interests be known. If you message someone first, that's okay. If maybe you're out and about and you're in the line, maybe to check out, or you're getting coffee and you strike up a conversation with a guy, okay, that's perfectly fine. So I don't feel like men always have to be the ones to make the first move, so to speak. But then once a woman makes her interest known, that she is interested, then I believe it's on the man to pursue her if there is mutual interest. So yes, I don't believe that the women should go out there chasing a man. And to your point, that's the thing about men, because I ask them and they'll tell you, if I'm interested, I will pursue. But they enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with the woman shooting her shot, so to speak, or at least making her interest
That's known. Right. Yep. Slide into the DMs,
absolutely.
Shoot your shot, whatever you
absolutely. Because you never know how it could lead. And sometimes it's not even, you might just not be on that person's radar. How at Facebook and algorithms are, we might not even see people's posts.
Right.
So shoot your shot. Absolutely.
Very good. On the topic of assertive and shooting your shot, there are a lot of women now in leadership positions who are independent and corporate, and the complaint or the feedback, me included, that we get a lot of time is that you're intimidating and you haven't even done anything. You just have a title and a picture. Somebody literally told me at one point that my profile on Match was intimidating. It was some pictures of me riding a bike and at the beach. And I'm like, is that an issue with them, or is there something we need to tone down? I feel like a king isn't intimidated by a queen, but I'm not an expert in this area. What is the intimidation thing about?
Yeah, you know what? This is something that I hear from a lot of women, especially women who are, like you mentioned, who are successful. And it's so frustrating. But I think the thing is, traditionally, when a man has dated maybe a woman who was successful, what happens is they say there is a lot of masculine energy that goes into the relationship. And let's be honest, a lot of times for successful women, they have to bring that masculine energy and have that at their job, right? Because you're probably dealing with a lot of males, people are probably reporting to you. And so sometimes you do have to tap into that masculine energy. But where it falls short is the women have to, they have to know when to turn that on and turn that off. They have to understand that as a man, he's going to want to be the leader. But then on that flip side, then the men also have to realize that, like we were talking about with past relationships, they have to realize, hey, she's a new woman. This is not like maybe someone I've dated before, or an ex who may not have been able to know how to flip that page.
Right.
So I think it's a little bit on both sides, but I will give that advice. I think that's what I've been hearing feedback from the market is that it's just, the women, especially the successful ones, it's a misconception that they don't know how to turn it off. When it comes to having that masculine energy or kind of being that alpha personality.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That is fair. And if that's what they're looking for and they don't want it turned off, then I guess they need to let her know. Carry on. You're doing
Absolutely
good. All right, Captain. Tell me one of your success stories before we wrap up here. Something that you weren't even sure was going to work out, but it came through.
My favorite
Give us hope.
Story. Yes, it is just a beautiful story. And whenever I make matches, I always have, obviously for me to present a match, I always have a hope and I always have a feeling that this is the right match for you. But one of my clients, I worked with her earlier this year. It happened really fast. She was such a beautiful person inside and out. I had done what I call family and friends reference call. And so what that means with a lot of my clients, I talked up to 3 of their loved ones. And it's optional, but a lot of them like for me to do it. And for her, it was wonderful because her family members and her closest friends were able to give me additional insight into her personality. They were telling me how she's perceived by others. And they were also giving me their opinions on the type of man that they think she would be a great fit for. So I gathered a lot of information on her. Then I went out and I found this guy. Something about her, I'll say, is she has a career-driven woman. She has a very successful, but she has a passion and loves music and creativity, but that's not something that she really gets a lot of time for. So I found a guy and he's actually a musician. And so I knew that with them, I was like, that's the perfect balance because, that's something she enjoys, but that's not something she really gets to spend a lot of her time on, especially since she has a serious job. And when I introduced them, they hit it off. She lived in Dallas. He actually lived in Houston. So they've seen each other several times. They've traveled together. They're going on trips. She sends me periodic updates and they are doing phenomenal. And so it's just really, really exciting to see.
Okay, you said something there that caught my ear. You said, I found this guy. That just sounds random. What are you finding these men? You just like you went to Sprouts and there was a dude.
I found him. It's funny because for him, I sent him an email, but for me, I cast a wide net. I have a free database on my website that I look for matches. I tap into my own personal network. I also utilize social media a lot. Typically, I would be out there attending networking in-person events because of COVID. Obviously, a lot of that has shifted. And so now I do a lot with social media, Clubhouse, Instagram, LinkedIn, looking at all those platforms.
Very good. Very good. So maybe we need to widen our net too. We're looking on our own, but I love that you're not just waiting for people to come and sign up for your database, although I'd highly recommend it, mosaicmatchmaking.com, but that you're also out actively engaged and you're, hearing what the complaints are, what the people are excited about. So that makes a difference as well. So tell us what you have upcoming. Do you have any virtual events and also how they can find you?
Yes, please find me at Mosaic Matchmaking on all platforms. I am thinking about my next event. I did one virtual event for just women in dating, and the men said that they wanted one too. So I said, okay. I'm planning an event just for the men to talk about different dating topics and first date tips. Yes. So I'm really excited to connect with them. And it is my 1-year anniversary. And especially for your listeners, Dr. Mo, I want to do a free dating consultation. So I'll give you my link, Dr. Mo, so you can share. But I just am happy to connect and just maybe give tips, ideas, some advice to put everybody on the right footing.
That is wonderful. Thank you for offering that to our listeners. This will be on my podcast, Perpetual Motion with Dr. Mo Anderson, on the YouTube channel and on all the social media. And you guys do take advantage of it because that's how we met. I did a consultation with you and then things just worked out in my life, but I was so inspired and impressed by you. I was like, I got to spread the word, make sure people know about Brooke Fitzpatrick and mosaicmatchmaking.com, and connect with her on social media. She's easy to find. She's got a great logo, great website, and share her information. If you guys are married and you're hearing this and you got that cousin, that sister, or whatever, just can't quite get it right, let them know there is help.
I really appreciate you, Dr. Mo.
I appreciate you as well. Again, happy anniversary for your business, continued success with you and Jared. And I hope we can do this again, maybe next quarter or so, and just see what's going on and update and talk about it. Because as things change with our nation, with the situation, with stress and stay at home and all of that, I think it changes the way we interact as a community. And,
absolutely,
the potential for finding your perfect match.
Well,
thank you. Thank you all for listening to Perpetual Motion with Dr. Mo Anderson. Please like, subscribe, share. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And my next episode, we'll be talking to Brian J. Oles of Black Speakers Network. We are all public speaking, whether you're trying to convince your family to go on vacation or pitching that new product, or, just wherever you are, it's public speaking. You can do better at it and be more successful. So join us for that and have a great weekend. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you so much. Take care.